the governor created was what I would call generating a pseudoscience. Trying to say that blacks were inferior. We this that we don't know. How they didn't even know how to wipe their behinds and wash their bodies until we showed them how to do it.
If you have been here, you would have known this already. You see, Mungo Park is the one discovering River Niger. But do you know that the people living around the River Niger have been living there before the pyramids were built?
I remember Dr. Ben made he was lecturing at Texas Southern University, and then he was talking about the Nubian Grimaldis, and they stated that the Grimaldis, when they found them in their burial site there in Italy, they were like some of them would look like the Twa people of Central Africa, the Twas of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the short people. And he said when they found their sites, their burial sites, all of them was buried in a fetal position.
Thank you for checking out Obehi Podcast. We encourage people to own their story and share it with the world to expand their purpose. Before we start this presentation, I have something to quickly share with you. Are you a purpose-driven entrepreneur? Do you want to cut across the noise and attract your ideal client by leveraging your own story? Then pay attention. I have a signature program that can help you own your story. A 5-step transformative journey to reshape your professional and business narrative for success in less than 90 days. And it's available at academy.aclasses.org/story. This is what we have understood. Storytelling is the most powerful instrument known to man. And this is what that could mean to you. You can either own your story and use it to advance your purpose in your business and professional life, or someone else will do. The choice is yours. Now let's get started with today's episode of the Obehi Podcast.
My name is Negus Rudison Imhotep. I'm a doctor of business administration with concentration in human resource management. I'm a native of Houston, Texas, yet I live in Des Moines, Iowa. I am an African of the diaspora. I make it clear that I'm an African before I'm an American. I, yes, I am African, and I was just not born on the continent. Yet you can take a African lion male and a African lion female in America, and they can have a baby, and the baby still is an African lion. so so that's why I look at it. I'm just an African that was born in America. Grew up in the South, down in Texas during the 1960s. Um, had lovely parents, father and mother, uh, grandparents on my paternal side. My maternal grandparents were deceased before I was born. Um, I love Africa because my parents, they instilled in us, in my brothers and sisters, the need for us to understand where we came from, where our ancestors come from, because it's hard for you to love the fruit and hate the tree. Here in America, in the United States, amongst people of the African diaspora, were taught that nothing positive ever really came out of the continent of Africa. Everything that comes from Africa was negative. Um, and I remember as a child back in the in the 1960s. I was in the living room one Sunday after my parents had made a beautiful dinner after we came from church, and we were in the living room, my brothers and sisters, and we were all sitting around the TV watching a show on CBS, a local national network uh, called 60 Minutes, and they were showing the civil rights movement. And I remember watching men and women who were singing songs of freedom and carrying Bibles being beaten by the police, water hose on the people. People were just beaten and thrown into uh, police paddy wagons and taken to jail because they wanted to vote. They wanted to be free. They thought that the vote would make them free. Uh, it was a unusual time during the period of segregation, yet it was a, a period of learning for me because I was in a community that was predominant, was almost 100% Black, 100% African. And all the businesses in our community were owned by people who looked like me. And it was a wonderful thing. Even our schools, we had our principals, our teachers were all people that looked like us, and they were concerned about young people getting a proper education to uplift our community and uplift our people. So that's what I really noticed about early on in life in Houston. And it was quite an ordeal because I remember even from my earliest point of education, when I went to primary school, I went to a private uh, Black school, a school that was focused on uplifting and educating the youth. And it was a wonderful time. Uh, but yet time passed, and I remember in 1965, Malcolm X was assassinated. There wasn't much said about Malcolm in our home because Malcolm was labeled as a rebel raiser, a troublemaker. Uh, but 3 years later, uh, Martin Luther King was assassinated. And when he was assassinated, it was a day of duress. I saw, even in my community coming up as a kid, I remember that day so vividly. It was like the birds stopped singing in the trees. Uh, you, like the squirrels stopped moving. You could hear people crying. If you walk down the street, all you would hear was people crying because Black people in America was wondering, what are we going to do now? They killed a violent man that labeled someone who was violent uh, Malcolm X. But then here they come around and they kill someone who's talking about peace and love. So it was a horrible event for me because it was just looking and seeing my parents and hearing people, grown people crying, just wailing, not just crying, wailing from their souls, from the inner depths of their souls. The people were afraid, didn't know what was going to happen. You know, like I said, I remember those times because it was times where segregation had us in a situation where if we traveled up and down the highway, my father would always carry inside his glove compartment was a book called the Green Book. And this Green Book was a list of businesses where Black people could go to, gas stations where we could get gas, uh, places where we could obtain lodging, because at that time it was against the law for black people to stay in hotels. We couldn't go to the Ramada Inn or the Holiday Inn or some of these local brand hotels here in this country because it was against the law. They wouldn't accept your money because you were black, and it was a rough time. Uh, I know it was rougher on my parents than it was on us because we were children and they were doing their best to shelter us from what was going on. But in all reality, I wish they would have told us more. Now, it was so sad because I remember it so vividly. It was just like a couple of weeks, maybe a month or two after my parents, after Martin Luther King was assassinated, my parents went through a divorce. And it was for the first time in my life that my parents I didn't know what it was like to not have both mother and father together. And we, my mother moved uh, my two sisters and my younger brother from Houston, Texas to Des Moines, Iowa. And it was a cultural shock for me because I had never been around that many white folks in my life. I was nervous because I wasn't used to seeing a bunch of white people in my community, wherever I was going. And I knew it was very different because I was treated differently. I wasn't treated the same way that I was treated when I was back in my own community down south in Texas. I know I jumped around quite a bit, but I even remember back in Texas when I was a kid, um, my father would kill a cow, kill a goat, whatever, and he would give meat to some of the people in the neighborhood whoever wanted some, or people who might have needed some food. He would give it to them. And wouldn't charge you. You just say, here's something you can take it home to your family so you can eat, and we were communal as a group of people because as a community we looked out for one another. Everybody in our community looked like us, and they were doing their best to protect us and to nurture us that we could become strong men and women and be productive people in our society. So it was quite different from where things might have been in other communities or with other groups of people.
When you make that comparison to what is happening today in the United States, uh, a country where you were formed, where you basically got your reality, and you see things change, what difference or what comparison would you make? That is comparing the time you were a young adolescent, see all these different changes, and the time where you have become an adult, a man, a husband, a grandfather, a father. So tell me what you see as a comparison.
I was told that we were never black people in America. They were told that nothing positive came from Africa. Only negative stuff came from Africa, and that was a major issue. Uh, and then I was wondering, why is that? And I remember, as I stated, one Sunday, my parents were in the living room and we were watching 60 Minutes on CBS station uh, after having dinner on Sunday coming from church. And the episode on 60 Minutes showed people in Birmingham, Alabama. There was a bombing where three little girls were killed in a bombing at a Baptist church in Birmingham, Alabama. I remember the date because it was my birthday. It was September the 15th in 1963. And three little girls were killed while they were in church on Sunday school. And after watching the episode of that 60 Minutes show, I looked over to my father after the show was over, and I looked at my father and I said, Dad, it's not our fault that we're Negroes, because that's what they called us then, Negroes. We weren't called African Americans, or we were called Negroes. And my father looked at me and jumped up out of his seat and grabbed me by my chest and told me, "You be proud to be a Negro." I said, "But why, Dad?" And then I looked in my father's eyes, and it was the first time in my life that I saw my father just cry right in front of me. And my mother came up and hugged my dad while he was crying. And that Monday, my parents went and did something. And then the following, maybe 2 or 3 days later, we had a shipment that came in, and it was the Negro Encyclopedias. It was by Johnson, that made Ebony magazine back in the 60s and 70s here. Ebony and Jet magazine was a popular magazine among blacks at that time, because Jet and Ebony was probably our Facebook at that time, you know. And they found out that there was an encyclopedia about black people, and my parents brought it home, and I went crazy, because my parents always told us the readers were leaders. So I started with the letter A until started reading the book till I could read all the way through the entire book, the encyclopedia. A was for Africa, aardvark, you know, and I just kept reading them and kept reading them, and I found out more and more and more about the continent of Africa. Uh, my parents also then they opened their doors to exchange students, and we had exchange students from former Zaire, former Upper Volta, which is Burkina Faso, former Zaire, which is the Democratic Republic of Congo, and we also had a gentleman that was from Nigeria named Momo Wale. I always remember him because he used to sing little songs and tell me stories about Africa, and he talked about Nigeria. He talked about uh, um, the, the empire of the Benin, ancient walls of Benin, and then I was like, oh my God! I started looking more in those books to find out more and more about that subject, and I wanted to grow into knowing about who and what who my ancestors are and the things that they accomplished. And once I come to find out the things that they accomplished, uh, by the time that the white man got up out of the caves of Europe and started to see what fire was and other things like that was, Africa went to sleep because we had done everything on this planet that any man or any woman could do.
You cannot be any other thing. You cannot be any other
Yeah.
person. You cannot be another man.
Mhm.
You are a person of dignity. That is who we
Yeah.
are.
I had a young man told me the other day, he said, "You walk like you just royal." I said, "Well, do you know what my name means? My name is Negus. And Negus is a name that means royal. Negus means king. Okay. So that's why I walk royal, because I know who I am. I love myself, and I accepted my African self. You know, to this day, I'm a 64-year-old man with white hair, white beard, dreadlocks. Folks look at me like, I said, I'm not here to please anybody other than myself. I'm not here to follow the norms that someone else tried to plant on me. Uh, a lot of blacks, even here in Central Iowa, where I'm at here in Des Moines, a lot of blacks who are Eurocentric in thought and in nature, they have a major disdain for a person like me, because I remind them about who they are. And I remind other people, especially the people of European descent, I'm here to remind them and to. I told my father told me, in other words, he said that I was the blackest child he had, and he said, boy, you was born to harass white people. And I said, well, I think that's my job then. I'm here to harass and to remind them. That's why I started my business, Rudison Consultancy Group LLC, and I changed the name recently to Sankofa Memory Consultancy LLC because I'm here to remind people of the past. Because here, especially in this society right now, the powers that be, the power structures, trying their best to use forms of erasure and to remove uh, the history of Black people. Uh, the right wing conservatives as well as the liberals. It makes no difference. Both of them are the same. One is like my father would say, a Republican and a Democrat. They said you got a right wing and a left wing. He said they're on the same bird. You need to remember that. Always remember they're on the same bird, and so neither Democrat or Republican leadership has done anything for the emancipation of Black people. Black people still in this society, they're only free as their money can take them.
That's a good point. That's a good point. You see, now this election time in the United States, now you will usually have a political party that says, "Oh, we are the party that respect the Black people in the United States." Well, you don't need to tell me that. You need to show me. Republicans, whether you are Republican or Democrat, you didn't just jump down here yesterday. We have been here together in the United States. If you have really been on my side, I will see it in evidence. You don't need to preach to me. You need to show me.
No.
So
Yeah.
you are right. No, whether you are Democrat or Republican, they are the same, just the same coin that have two faces, but it's the same thing.
Yes.
So
Yes.
if you really are for Black people, you don't need to say it. They will know. Just show it.
Now you sound like my great grandmother. You're gonna make me tell a story
Please
because I'm
go.
a storyteller.
Please go.
Okay. My great grandmother, her name was Clara Lavender. She came out of a city, a town called Utah, Eutaw, Utah, Alabama. And my grandmother was born in the 1870s. Okay. And I remember my father. This was my great grandmother, my father's grandmother, and we drove from Texas to her place in Marshalltown, Iowa. And I remember when we got to the house, Emma, we call her Emma. She was in the late 70s, early 80s, and we came to her house and we were looking. We pulled up. My father pulled up in front of the house and knocked on the door. And when we heard somebody hollering around back. She said, "Come around back." And here, my dad and my brothers and sisters, we walk around to the back of the house, and there's a ladder. And here's my 80-something-year-old grandmother on a ladder up on top of the roof, patching her roof. And my dad screamed. He said, "Mama, come on down from there." Don't She said, "Oh boy, shut up. I know what I'm doing. I'm fixing it." She was patching her roof, and she did what she did. She came down because she saw all her little great grandbabies, and she came down and hugged us and all of that. And she started dusting her hands off. And she called my birth name was Claire. I was named after her because my father was named after her. My name at birth was Claire Rudison. Yeah, she said, "Claire," she said, "Boy, go over there and get me a chicken guinea, a duck out of that pen over there," because she had a pen where she had her chickens and ducks and guineas all together. And I went on in there and grabbed one and brought it out to her. And she said, "Well, wring its neck," and I went ahead and wrung its neck. And then she went in the house and brought out a pot of hot water. And I sat there on the back of the porch with her, and I was plucking the feathers all off uh, uh, the chicken, and she went ahead on in there and she took the meal, she cut it up and cooked. She made something that they called chicken and dumplings. Well, chicken is, she called our dumplings slickers. And she made that food, man. That food was so delicious. That was my great grandmother. That food, oh man, I was in my fingers. It was so good, you know. And we were all sitting in the living room after we had the dinner and did all of that. And she called me. She said, "Come here, Claire." I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "Did you learn anything?" I said, "What you mean?" I didn't learn. No, ma'am. She said, "Boy, you went out there and grabbed that bird and you didn't learn nothing." I said, "No, ma'am." She said, "I want you to always remember this." She said, "As long as you live." She said, "Remember, baby, mama chickens don't take care of baby ducks." I said, Oh, in other words, she told me to take care of my own. Take care of your own first. Look at the people in your house and your community and take care of them first before you go out and try to take care of anything else. First and foremost. Even in that evening when we were eating, she called me over to it because I was her namesake. And she grabbed some of the collard greens and she had cornbread. And she grabbed the cornbread and broke it up and pinched it with her fingers. And she told me, "Come here, baby." And she held it up to me like this. And she said, "Now open your mouth." And I opened my mouth and she put it in my mouth. And I ate it. She said, "How's that taste?" I said, "That's delicious, Ammo." She said, "Well, see, the way I gave you this food, that's the way my mama taught me to eat. She was from Africa. We eat with our hands. And it's good when you eat with your hands." That's all. I always remember that because she said her mama was from Africa.
That's so lovely. That's so lovely. That is the connection that we are building here. You see, actually, where Obehi Podcast is coming from is I came to Italy from Nigeria in 2004. At the point, I was asking myself, who were the first Africans in Italy, in this part of Italy, in the city where I am, which is Verona. Then from me to people, then I started to ask people, but who were the first people here? So I started to ask different series of questions. And that led to 7 books now. 2 books then. And later, recently I published 5-part book series. This time about storytelling, just collecting the stories of people. Now I'm telling people how to leverage the power of storytelling in what they do, whether in business, in community building, in leadership, anywhere. If you have to deal with human being, you need to learn to use story because story penetrates the wall that we have. So yes, we believe that it is the time for us to connect. So that in Obehi Podcast, I've done more than 1,000 interviews. And I believe I'm just starting. Because the mission is to connect among ourselves. I interview historian, professor, business executive, people of all kinds. What I'm interested in is our experiences. Let's talk about ourselves. We don't need somebody to come in between. You know, there are a lot of dimensions to your story, to what you're talking about. So I don't believe that we can cover all of it today. But let's see. This idea that somebody is coming to tell us about our other half. Like, for example, the European have always been the one telling the African diaspora, which of course the United States are part of. I mean, the Black people in the United States are part of the African diaspora. Now, the person that was telling them about Africa was the European. But guess what? It's also the European that is telling African about the African diaspora. That was a big privilege we give to them to do. And we cannot complain that we only have the negative image of ourselves. You know, that Africans in Africa do not have a good understanding of the life of the Africans in the diaspora. And the African in the diaspora also have a negative or a distorted image of the Africans in Africa. So the question, therefore, is, do we really have the possibility of able to learn among ourselves without the intermediary, without somebody in between that is doing the story? Can we just talk to ourselves?
We have to.
Yeah.
It's imperative that we do, because can't nobody tell my story like me, or your story like you, because it's your story. And for me to be as embracing Africa as much as I do, and to never been on the continent physically, is hard for a lot of people to comprehend. Why are you so intimate? Why are you so stuck on Africa? Because I know it is. It is where my origin comes from, and where all the civilization started. There was no such thing as civilization until it came out of Africa. And today, it's a lot of European nations around the world that call themselves having civilization, but I don't see them being civil at all. Most of the European nations that came to power, they came to power through terror and going in to steal resources to make their nation wealthy, or to get some things that they didn't have. And that's an awful lot, especially when it comes to the continent of Africa. I remember reading a book by called Born in Blackness by Howard French. And I remember going through primary school and high school, where they always told us that the age of exploration and discovery was that the Europeans went out to find herbs and spices because they didn't have salt or pepper, and they wanted to find silk over and all these different. The main thing that Howard French stated in this book was that basically Europeans came to Africa looking for gold, and it was because of what Mansa Musa did when he came to Mecca, when he made his pilgrimage to Mecca and brought so much gold into that particular region of the world where it messed up the economy for at least 10 years. People had so much gold everywhere, gold wasn't worth too much because everybody had it. And Mansa Musa brought it. So I looked at that and it showed right then and there, that was the objective of exploration, was about greed and snatching up all the resources that they possibly could get to bring back to their nation, to underdevelop and not to even develop the continent of Africa. Because I remember several years ago reading a book by Walter Rodney, the late great Walter Rodney, a tribute to the martyr. He wrote a book called How the Europeans Underdeveloped Africa. And Rodney, one of my mentors, Dr. Dennis H. Young, a PhD from Belize, and he was a classmate, as a matter of fact, a roommate with Walter Rodney, because Dr. Young and Walter Rodney were both. I think they went to Harvard for a while, and they met each other, I guess, while they were undergrads, and they were two black men who were to academia and to this planet. I'm inclined to believe that he was assassinated a year or two after that book, because he died from a car bombing in Guyana, in his hometown. He was extremely controversial while he was teaching at the University of the West Indies in Jamaica. They labeled him such a radical. The University of the West Indies expelled him from the campus because they know he was labeled as a rebel raiser. I think he was assassinated in the year 1918. Yeah. and talking about a brilliant individual. He put me to the mind of a extension of a Franz Fanon, because Franz Fanon was another individual who wrote uh, Black Skin, White Mass. He also wrote Wretched of the Earth about the Algerian war against the French and colonial Algeria, and they just brilliant minds, brilliant minds that look at a problem critically, objectively, and look at ways to find solutions to the problems that affect people of the African diaspora. Uh, I remember being around a bunch of. I have some great mentors in my life. I had a professor at Texas Southern University, Dr. Zuberi Wamba. It was from Tanzania, and he worked there in Dar es Salaam, and he worked for Malimu, uh, Dr. Julius Nyeri, and
Yeah, it's
excuse
okay.
me,
It's perfectly
he,
fine.
yeah, he worked for Dr. Julius Nyeri, and Dr. Wamba used to tell us that I think he was a undersecretary of communications under Julius Nyeri, and then he ended up going to school at Howard University in Washington D.C. And while he was there at Howard University, it was a professor, the late great Dr. Chancellor Williams. He wrote a book called The Destruction of Black Civilizations. And Dr. Wamba was working on his PhD at the time. He was working on his dissertation. And he was a student of Dr. Williams, but Dr. Williams' sight was getting bad because he was an older man at that time and his vision was getting extremely blurred. And Dr. Wamba, Zuberi Wamba of Tanzania, was the one that did the editing, some editing of his book for The Destruction of Black Civilization. Another great book that provides empirical, evidence-based data about what happened on the continent of Africa and why uh, the decline of power occurred.
Those are important conversation for us today in the diaspora because um, I was talking to a Jamaican friend, a business person, a
Mhm.
writer, a publisher, and the other day we're talking about the responsibility of African people in terms of our development because I'm of the opinion that it got to a point that we need to stand up for ourselves by ourselves in order to own the ground where we're even standing. Because no help is going to come. No salvation is coming from nowhere. So if we are going to
No,
free ourselves, we're going to do it ourselves, by ourselves. If we don't do it, we will remain like this for thousands of years. It doesn't concern anybody. So talking to her, I will say how much I value Africans and African in the diaspora who are writing because there is too few information in circulation about Africa by Africans. There are a lot of
yeah,
documentation about Africa, but not by Africans. Now, the danger of this is that a lot of Africa, particularly those that are westernized in their mentality, their orientation, in their thinking, in their perception of reality, is that they go around regurgitating the same information by the European without understanding the underlying information that is actually hidden there. Instead, what we could do is that we need to do the digging ourselves, which means it's going to be hard. Yes, but if you are looking for something substantial, you need to do the hard work. You cannot just pick the hanging fruit around the corner and you say you have done the job. No, you do the digging. The other day, I was interviewing an Egyptologist. Okay, I know I'm sort of bringing in too many things into the water now.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
So
I'm with you,
her name
brother.
is Vanessa. Then I was interviewing her, talking about Egyptology. Okay, now this is another important conversation again. That many Egyptologists are European or at least no Africans. Where is Egypt? Egypt is in Africa.
Yusuf bin Yaqanan, he taught at Cornell University. He wrote numerous manuscripts on the continent of Africa, especially. Uh, uh, I remember one book called "The Black Man and the Nile," Africa, the Mother of Western Civilization. He wrote numerous books and numerous videos about Dr. Yusuf bin Yaqanan, and he was very forthright and absolutely outspoken in the fact that mostly uh, what we were going to talk about in this subject was also dealing with the miseducation of the masses. Uh, Dr. Yusuf bin Yaqanan brought a whole different view to the public about who Africans really are, and that the the civilization of ancient Kemet, because we use the term Egypt, which is basically a Greek term, a Greek word, was ancient Kemet, or even the continent of Africa. Africa is a Greek word as well. When the ancestors, what Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop wrote in the introduction to African civilizations, he stated that the oldest known name that he found was called Akebulin, Alkebulan, Akebulin. And Akebulin was the name of the continent, which means the mother of mankind. And Dr. Diop was instrumental in bringing forth that information through archaeological research. And Diop gets a lot of the accolades about his research. Yet it was a man that came from Haiti, Antonor Furman, back in the 1860s, early 1870s. Antonor Furman was a black man who was an Egyptologist, an attorney, and an anthropologist. And he wrote an essay back in the 1860s, I'm inclined to believe, or 1870s, about essay on the equality of the human species. Because 30 years prior, there was another essay written by the person that I call the father of European racism. His name was Count de Gobineau, Count Joseph de Gobineau, because de Gobineau wrote this essay back in the maybe 30 years prior to what Furman wrote. And his essay was called The Inequality of the Human Species, stating that Europeans were superior in everything, intellectual, physical, which was a bona fide lie, and a form of what 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 the Gobineau created was what I would call generating a pseudoscience. Trying to say that blacks were inferior. We this that we don't know. They didn't even know how to wipe their behinds and wash their bodies until we showed them how to do it. You're in Italy and looking at some of the first blacks in Italy. The first blacks in Italy were the Etruscans and some other people called the Nubian Grimaldis. Uh, so and they predate the birth of Christ, because all of the Mediterranean and the ancient world predominantly was black or mulatto. Okay,
That
all
should
around the
not even be
Mediterranean.
difficult for somebody to understand. But
Well, I don't. If it's difficult or not, I'm telling the truth. And they can go and dig the research yourself. You in Italy, and you can go into those museums and dig and find out yourself. Because I remember Dr. Ben made he was lecturing at Texas Southern University, and then he was talking about the Nubian Grimaldis, and they stated that the Grimaldis, when they found them in their burial sites there in Italy, they were like uh, some of them would look like the Twa people of Central Africa, the Twas of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the short people. And he said when they found their sites, their burial sites, all of them was buried in a fetal position, just like the baby in the womb inside the stomach of his mother, in that same position. That's where they found these bones of our ancestors that lived in ancient Italy. You know, so and then we're have to look at the people who the Moors who were there for centuries. The people of North Africa was there for centuries. Uh, the Phoenician people who were from the Mediterranean over in what we call present day Israel, they circumnavigated the planet as well. As a matter of fact, they even found some Phoenician ships wreckage here in the United States in the Mississippi Delta. Okay, so before the birth of Christ, black people were here in this portion of the world.
And that should not be surprising too. I think where the problem become a little bit more complicated, at least they made it complicated, is that the European want the world to see reality through their lenses. But this is defective. The reason why it is a problematic is that the Europeans themselves came too late to world history. If we want to look at the reality through the European lens, then this world becomes very young. But this world is not young. We have been here for thousands and thousands of years. So we can't look at the world through the lenses of the European. There is a saying among the European, among the Euro-Western, in this sense now, that Europe is the old continent. When I hear that, I usually say, but from what perspective are you seeing Europe as the old continent? Because if you are looking at it from the point of view of Africa, Europe is a young continent. In fact, it's one of the youngest, actually. People have been occupying other parts of the world. Of course, by extension, they're actually coming from Africa because the motherland, like you said, is Africa. No human being was living anywhere. The human being actually was living in Africa. Different form of migration happened. They didn't enter Europe because it was just too cold. You are human being. The same law that govern our life, govern the life of people in Europe. All of us are coming from the same root. But what we are saying is that between Africa and Europe is a young child. Okay, let me say this. You see, European, up until recently, started to say that they discovered this. Now, the question I usually ask about that is, but how are you discovering something if you have been here all along? It means you are new. Because if you have been here, you would have known this already. You see, Mungo Park is the one discovering River Niger. But do you know that the people living around the River Niger have been living there before the pyramids were built? No. It is simple, no? People have been living in the Nile of Nigeria, in the Niger Delta of Nigeria before the pyramids were built. How come the young boy born yesterday is the one discovering River Niger? What is happening here? Europeans are new here. Please go on.
Well, that's called the miseducation of the masses. Okay, because they're like you said, they want to follow the lens, the European lens, on how to view the world, and mostly those who are getting formal education here in the U.S., in Europe, and elsewhere are basically focused on the Frankfurt School of Thought. So if you're looking at things from the Frankfurt School of Thought, you're looking from a Eurocentric view, and not another view from outside of other people who've been here for way longer. Even as a matter of fact, the term Europe came from a pharaoh's wife named Europa, because Europa was the wife of an ancient Kemetic pharaoh, and black people populated Europe because there were no white people. At one time there was
That might
light
be difficult for people to
because
swallow,
all
but
the
it's true.
people, yeah, the people, uh, Africa is the mother of civilization, the mother of humanity, and people evolved there on the continent of Africa to where they got up and then they migrated and circumnavigated the entire planet. So at one time, everybody on the planet, and still to this day, everybody on the planet, if they don't look like the indigenous Africans, they're a distorted view of the indigenous African.
Yeah, that is interesting. And that takes us to the first part of the conversation, which is the miseducation of the masses. What does that mean?
Yes, that means if you got a Eurocentric mind, you are doomed. You are doomed and damned. If you think that if you're going to take the viewpoint of your oppressor and think that's going to do something to liberate you, because information is being suppressed and absolutely distorted. Because if you have a viewpoint or you look from another lens, now I'm labeled as a critical race theorist, CRT man, because I utilize the critical race theory in my doctoral dissertation at North Central University, and then the dissertation, what is the thesis was entitled "Hiring Nonviolent African American Male Ex-Offenders: A Phenomenological Investigation on Employment Discrimination." And I remember looking at numerous theories, but that the critical race theory that Dr. Derek Bell came up with, Derek Bell, who happened to be the first tenured law professor at not Howard, excuse me, at Harvard University. He came up with the theory, and others, uh, people in law school, started utilizing that particular theory. And it was just that the entire fabric, the entire manuscript of the U.S. Constitution and all of its bylaws were basically focused, and racism is entangled in everything that was written in it. Uh, this nation here that I live in the United States, was created for white people, but black people from Africa came here and did the work to establish this country.
All right, we are
Okay.
coming to that conversation. We are coming to a full episode on the critical race theory. I already did one, but I would like to take it from you because I interviewed already a U.S. Writer, a professor on the topic. But I would like us to cover it. We'll come to that on another episode.
Yeah.
All right, tell me,
Yeah.
how does miseducation work in the sense of when we look at our institution today? Okay, you'll be studying this area. How do they miseducate the people? I mean, what are the mechanisms that help the state, if you want to call it, or the institution, that make it possible for them to miseducate the people?
Well, when you've been in power for over 400 years and you tell everybody that you're the best and everyone else is beneath you, that's how it makes a difference. Um, Europeans make it seems like they are the founders of everything. Like you stated, you're from Nigeria, and here comes Mongo Parks talking about he discovered the Niger River.
It's stupid.
How in the hell you discover something when people already live there? You know, you came to visit and you saw a river that you had never seen before. You didn't discover anything. People already, Africans went around the world and we didn't say we discovered this and we discovered that. People, come on. That's the nature of the beast. The nature of that Eurocentric lens is that if they didn't have their hands on it, it's no good. So if you want to be good, you got to look at it the way that we look at it. You got to look at it from a Eurocentric point of view. So that really is uh, has really affected the mental psyche of black people because they were taught that nothing good comes out of Africa. I know for those who are Christians, they had this statement in their gospel. They talk about, could anything good come out of Nazareth? That's that question. Can anything good come out of Africa? Absolutely. Absolutely. Everything can, from math, science, literature, astronomy, astrology, uh, agriculture, uh, technology. We are. I was talking to a young man from Gabon just a couple of months ago because he was a Washington Mandela Fellow. He was a businessman in Libreville, Gabon, and he came here for a month to do some studying here to try to help his business in Gabon. And he was a young man, probably in his mid 30s, and I was talking to him about Gabon, where he was born, and I asked him, was he aware that your country had natural nuclear reactors? He wasn't aware of that. I said, "What? They, you didn't know that?" Yeah, no, he wasn't aware of it. But there are a certain spot, a region in Gabon where there are nature created these nuclear reactors right already in Gabon. Made me wonder, and I said, Now nuclear reactors generate energy, okay? And then I started wondering again because I started reading the history and I heard about ancient Benin and the Great Wall of Benin and how the city of Benin was, and how even I read that they even had lights on the streets in Benin. They had lights on the streets even in Southern Europe over there in Spain when the Moors were there. Everywhere we went as a people, we did something to improve the area or that region without destroying things. But when the Europeans come in, they come in to take and destroy. That's all they do. Come, take, and destroy. Get the resources, destroy. And I mean natural resources, minerals from the ground, food that grows, and even to the point of human capital, the human resources that they take. And then we go, a lot of us come from the continent or come from wherever we come from. I know a lot of my friends that I went to school with who were from Africa. A lot of them, when they came to school here, some of them didn't return and go back home, which is, I think, is negative. Because if you really got an education, Trinity Brothers, Dr. Carter G. Woodson, he wrote a book called The Miseducation of the Negro in America in 1933, and he was the founder of Black History Week, and then it later on became Black History Month. And Carter G. Woodson stated in his book, The Miseducation of the Negro in America, he said, if we really were educated and went through the school systems and obtained this education, we should be able to do for ourselves. We don't need to go to school and get a degree to come out and work for the power structure. In this society, most of the folks said, I'm going to school so I can get a job, so I can get a good job and work with white folks. What the hell? Why not go back and build up your community? Go back and build your nation. Come together and do some things that we can make things better. Not taking European concepts, but Do something, go back home and make things better for your people. Because I want to go back to Africa. I want it to be nice. I
All right.
know it's nice already, and it could be better.
All right. Now, tell me about the importance of education. Now, before you respond, I want to share a contest. You see, I come from a people in south of Nigeria. Our people are called Esan. Okay, I was sharing with you yesterday. I remember.
Yeah.
Now, the Esan people are very good in medicine. The god of medicine in Esan people is known as Osun. So that there are many people among Esan that you will hear names like Okosun, Osunde. There are very many in Esan. Now, because they are very good in medicine, of course, medicine is coming from nature.
Yes.
They're actually a combination of different plants, which you know how to put together, then it can heal. And this medicine can also be very powerful because, like you said, there are natural reactor that is already in place in Gabon. Because nature is known, nature have everything available for us to live very, very well. But all we need is the knowledge to be able to know how to apply them. Where I'm going, before I make it a little bit longer, is that our ancestors know how to apply the roots, the leaves, and the bark of the plant to heal people.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't go to any Western school, but they knew how to do it, and it worked for them. Many of us now have gone to Western school. We are educated. We are professor, doctor, engineer. Let me tell you what is happening now. Many of us don't even know the name of the plant in our forest to start with, not to talk of how to apply them.
Yeah.
The question, what is the importance of education? And what type of education are we even talking about here?
You know, it is absolutely imperative that we get more than what the Western educational system has to provide. You brought that information up about the people from your particular ethnic group who were healers and knew how to uh, take plants, different herbs, different barks, different roots from trees, and do use it for medicine. My mother's father here in who lived here in Des Moines was a native of Virginia, but in the 1920s and 1930s, my grandfather, my mother's father, had the only apothecary in town for black people. He was a root man. My grandfather, he knew the right roots to dig up the particular type of bark to dig up out the ground, and in other words, he knew pharmacology. He knew he was a botanist because he knew the right plants. He didn't go to school and learn it. He didn't go and take a formal education to obtain that information, but he knew how to do it. The same with my great grandmother that I talked about earlier, my great grandmother Emma. My father, when he was a boy, he jumped out a swing, while the swing in the playground as a kid, and he jumped out a swing, and while the swing was up in the air high, and he came down to jump, and when he landed, his feet was in the sand, but his hands went down to embrace him from falling, and the bone in his wrist came right out. And at that time in the 1940s, uh, the people here were talking about cutting my father's hand off. And my grandmother told him, "Oh no, don't you dare let him do that." And his hand healed naturally. They gave him stuff, but here in this system here in the U.S. wanted to amputate his hand, his right hand. But my grandmother, coming off from a plantation picking cotton in Alabama, who never went to no one school, was my father's physical therapist. She showed him how to utilize that hand and use that hand. It wasn't his predominant hand anymore. His right hand was his dominant hand, but he became left-handed. But the right hand, she constantly gave him balls and different types of things to exercise that hand so that that hand would be useful and where he wouldn't be handicapped. She didn't go to John Hopkins. She didn't go to anybody's college. She didn't go to school at all, but she knew what to do. And that's because that African genius that was already in her.
Uh, I think people need to, I repeat again, nature is complete. All the knowledge is there. Okay, now, let's even pretend that people are not intelligent in Africa. But if you have been living for all these years, it is impossible that you don't understand how to do things. I mean, everything. You see, where I came from, it is not normal that you should depend on another person to live. You depend on nature to live in the sense that you plant, you harvest. If you are not weak, you should be able to go to the forest and cultivate. If you cultivate, nature is faithful. It will replicate what you have put in. You will have food to eat. So you cannot die of hunger. It is impossible. Because the land is not barren. You are not barren. You are not weak. How come you can't find food to eat? But let me tell you what is happening now again, because they already crack the African system, particularly that of Nigeria. They continuously cracking, experimenting on different type of suffering on the people. They are doing it intentionally. I don't know if you read the book Things Fall Apart by Dr. Chinua Achebe. Dr. Chinua Achebe in his book,
Things Fall Apart.
Things Fall Apart, said that putting us together. That is what the colonialists did. Now everything is falling apart. Now, in African culture, is exactly what you were describing when you were a child. It is a community base. We care for each other. We love each other because there is something holding us together. I use it figuratively like a tree. There is a tree in the middle of us. Everybody is rallying around it because that is the life of the community. Now, the system, even right in Nigeria, is continuously cracking that system, continuously cracking that living together so that now it is, strange things are happening in the land. Kidnapping everywhere. It wasn't heard of. How can you go and just kidnap somebody for what? They say, bring money. If you don't bring money, they will kill you. Life for us was sacred. Life was sacred. You don't just take life like that. It is unheard of that you even take your own life. It is something that it is not heard of. Now it is the day, because we believe now we are like the Europeans, so we can do anything, like our body belongs to us, our life belongs to us, our land belongs to us. Land was forbidden to be sold. I'm not talking only in Nigeria or in my culture, everywhere in Africa, because it was considered part of who you are. You cannot say who you are.
Yeah. Well, that's the difference in the mindset of the African intellect in comparison to Eurocentric thought. Because here in America, in the United States, Europeans came in with 13 colonies up and down the east coast of this country, and then all of a sudden one day some man just woke up and felt that it was a need to go and take the whole region of this nation. I look at what happened in 1802, in January 1, 1802, when the Haitian revolt and the people of Haiti won their independence from the French. Toussaint Louverture, Henry Christophe, and Thomas de La Salle were instrumental in Haiti getting their independence. But prior to that, the one who was the catalyst for Haiti obtaining their independence, it was a man named Francois Mackandel. He was a African who was enslaved in that particular region of the world at the time. He had one arm amputated, and he carried a little small book on his waist, which was a Quran. He was a pharmacologist and a botanist. and he knew how to mix certain herbs to make people healthy or to make people sick.
You go there again.
Okay, he created some herbs, and he told the women that was cooking for the people who was torturing the other black people. He told them, he said, put a little bit of this in the food, and they'll eat it, and they kept eating it, and within 3 months of it, was close to 7,000 people died from the poisoning, and that's how the Haitians got control of that portion of that island. They took the machetes and quit cutting sugarcane and start cutting people, and they took the land. And when Napoleon came to try to think that he was going to just take the island back, that portion of the island back, he found out when they brought their French Armada in the port of Prince, the Africans of Haiti was blowing the ships out of the port, so they had to get the hell out of there and go back to France. In so doing, several years later, the French sold the Louisiana Purchase, that they call here in the United States. In the history, they call the Louisiana Purchase, from Louisiana all the way up to Minnesota. It's a strip of land that the French sold to the United States. I think it was for about $7 million, and then the United States owned Louisiana, which has a French background, all the way up here to Minnesota. I'm in Iowa. I live in the city of Des Moines. Des Moines is a French word. The city of Des Moines, the state flag is the same as a French flag, but it has just an emblem in the middle of the white portion of the flag. It's red, white, and blue, just like the French flag, because this portion of the land was once owned by the French. Okay? So then they came up with this idea of manifest destiny. God has showed us that we need to take all the way over to California. Okay? So they went on killing, stealing, robbing, and taking land from people, killing the Indians, killing their buffalo, so that they could bring in their cattle and become cowboys, or what they want to call themselves, ranchers.
And
That's American history.
their morality justify all of that they were right.
Yeah, but they had a God sovereign right just to kill people and take their land. The same thing the British did in Australia in the 1770s. The British opened up their prisons, and over what they had over 15,000 prisoners from England taken down in ships to Australia. And the first thing the white man did when they got to Australia, they started killing the indigenous population on the islands of Australia, even to the point where it was an island south of Australia called Tasmania, where they went there and killed every living, breathing human on the island of Tasmania. A pure genocide of an entire group of people.
Again, that is morally right in the eyes of the European. You see, you were mentioning Ben before. Ben said, because Ben like consumes his information like crazy. Ben said, you cannot get justice from the European court. Okay, European now, I mean, Euro-Western society. That includes the United States and also Canada. Yeah. You can only get just this. They know what they're going to give you, but it's not justice. Because justice is fair. If you want to know what is fair, it have no color. But then, yeah, go on.
It was an old comedian here back in the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s named Red Fox. He was a crazy comedian. He had a show called the Sanford and Son. And I remember an episode where him and his buddy, they were black men, they went into a courtroom, And the first thing Fred said, Fred Sanford, Red Fox said, when he looked around and saw the black people, he looked over at his buddy. He said, "You know, it's enough niggas in here to make a Tarzan movie." He said, all I see, they talking about justice. He said, all I see in the courtroom is just us. Like, oh my God. He was telling the truth because the court system, this whole system, here in the United States, if we talk about the system, they call it the criminal justice. I call it the criminal legal system. They don't have a criminal justice, it's criminal legal. And looking at the establishment of this system, where we can go back to the 1730s when they started slave patrol. And slave patrol is how the police started here in the United States. They were out to go and capture Africans who were trying to obtain away from the plantation. So that's what the police in this United States, in this country, started, and they were to go out and harass and snatch people and bring them back and force them into servitude back on somebody's plantation.
That is a piece
So
of history.
as of today, here in the U.S. in 2024, 77% of every police in this country is a white man. That's a problem because white men don't represent 77% of the population of this nation.
After the guy who shot people in Buffalo, I was interviewing some people. I would say, but why is it that the white people are always policing the black neighborhood? Where are the black people there? Because you don't understand the culture you are policing. Is it possible that there are also men that can be put into the police force to police their own people? Because we are not talking of representation, right? So where are the men there that can police themselves?
Well, we can do that, but the thing is, we got people who are basically informers for the police, and the police here in this system today, they don't need uh, that verbal uh, individual because of the way technology is working. We living in a super surveillance society because there are satellites taking pictures of everything that people are doing around. You can't do anything. You can't even today. Anytime I travel and I have this cell phone, I can at the end of the month because I might have something on my phone on a Google account. At the end of the month, they'll tell me everywhere that I've traveled in my vehicle throughout the month, everywhere I've gone.
Yeah, the big brother is watching.
Well, that was it. That was it because George Orwell wrote that book in the 1940s called 1984, and it was written back in the 1940s that Big Brother, Big Brother's looking big time. He's got a big eye in the sky that's looking down on everybody.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. All right, now another question. For the people of African descent, particularly those in the diaspora, is there a danger to the miseducation? What is it?
Absolutely, absolutely, is danger because think about if you are miseducated, you're misinformed. You if you're miseducated, you fall right into how the system wants you to operate. I remember they had a movie called The Matrix with Keanu Reeves, and it was a blue pill or a red pill that you had to take, and you could say the one pill and everything remains the same as it is, but if you take the other pill, you're going to see things how they actually are. And today, uh, so many don't want to take the pill to see the things how they actually are.
Yeah, because the truth is not very simple for it is not because there is a responsibility to that follows the truth, no?
Yes, yes, you have to do for yourself. You can. You can do for yourself, just like you said. back home in Nigeria where you grew up, you you shouldn't go hungry. Because like my father said before his father told him before you marry a woman, you need to purchase some land and plant something in the ground so you can feed yourself before you start a family. And that makes all the sense in the world. If a man just from the sweat of his brow go out and work the earth and plant seeds, the earth is already producing things without us even planting them. Now, if it comes to us to domesticating the plants for for our consumption, we had the intelligence to do that as well.
That's so true.
Because so that's it. We should be able to have some fertile ground, which is the earth is here for everyone. That's what got me. I told my one of my cousins the other day. I said, "Man, we were born on this planet, but since we got here, they tell us we have to buy a home, we had to buy land, we had to buy water, we had to buy electricity, we had to buy all it. Why I got to buy something, or why I got to buy land that's already here for me? Huh? Why? I was born here just like anybody else, but once somebody got a stake upon something that says this is mine, and because it's mine, you have to purchase it. You stay back home in Nigeria, land and other places, not just Nigeria, but other uh, nations on the continent. People are not talking about purchasing land because the land is for everybody.
Anyway, that was there, and that is what
That was then, but
now
now
it's
it's different
completely different. I'm saying
because we start acting like white folks.
exactly. We are confused now. We are confused.
That's why I said miseducation. When you start acting like somebody that you're not,
There is consequences.
yeah, and then you deal with the consequences and wonder why you're in the situation that you are.
There are some arguments I usually bring up because Nigeria sometimes is a very complex situation, but it's actually one of the most realistic hope for the whole of the African continent. Why? Because they have the numeric advantage. You see, the United States, for example, is an important country in the world, not just because of the technology, also because of the people, because people are more important than technology. Otherwise, because have a lot of technology, it wouldn't care about immigration. But the unwritten law in the United States is that we need more. We need more people because we need more people so that we can fine-tune the most quality type. Because if you have only two, you only have to do with two. But if you need to be able to get more, you need the number. So number is important. Nigeria have the number. Every 5 people of African descent, one of them is in Nigeria. So, but there is something also happening in Nigeria is that, like I said before, they're over-experimenting on how to make the people suffer. The suffering in Nigeria is not normal. It's not normal at all. You see, before we discovered oil in Nigeria, the Nigerian economy was powered by agriculture. That agriculture is still there. But today, most of the food that we are consuming in Nigeria are coming from outside of the country, from Europe and the United States. The United States have no business sending food to Nigeria because we are the food basket. Nigeria is the top producer of cassava. From cassava, you can get ethanol. From cassava, you can get gari. From cassava, you can get food to feed the animal. I'm talking of just cassava. Is the #1 producer in the whole world. I'm not talking of palm oil. The Asian people came to the Palm Oil Research Institute in Benin City, which is the state where I'm coming from. That was, I think, in the 17 or in the late 70 or in the early 60s. Today, they are the top producer in the whole world. What have gone wrong? The nature has not failed Nigeria. The land is still there. The population is still, in fact, the population have grown very much. But we are pretending to be who we are not. We are miseducated, which is our miseducation make it in such that we are suffering in midst of abundance. And it's quite unfortunate.
That's sad. It's very unfortunate. But that's as we stated earlier when you put up the book of Walter Rodney, how the Europeans underdeveloped Africa, and it was the underdevelopment plus uh, what happened through colonialism. And like Kwame Nkrumah said, after colonialism came neo-colonialism, and from the neo-colonialism, when that particular era started to dissipate, you had indirect rule because you had people who think like the Europeans that's living there on the continent of Africa, and they follow the mindset of their oppressors because there's a lack of self-love and a lack of self-acceptance. When you love yourself, you don't have to be nobody else. If you love yourself, you don't have to act like anyone else because you love who you are and you'll do what you know you need to do. That's why I stated that some of the Abrahamic faiths, I'm talking about Hebrew, Jewish religion, Christianity, and Islam, uh, were religions that was there to control people and to conquer them. They stated that a missionary could do more than what an army could do.
Because they control the
You got
mind.
their mind. You got the mind. Your behind will follow. That's it. You got the mind, and that's what the African psychic has been distorted behind this white Jesus syndrome. A white Jesus and a Muhammad. They pushed it. They pushed it upon the people when people had their own traditional religions where they wasn't fighting each other behind what the because I'm a Yoruba and you're Igbo, I'm Hausa and you know we're all different groups of people, but we still had our own systems of belief where we didn't go at war between each other because of our belief system.
Yeah, yeah.
That's why I like Wale Senyenko when he made that comment. He was that he said he felt like people should learn and follow Orisha, the religion of the Yoruba, because they didn't come to dominate anybody. They just go ahead and follow their customs of the religion without going to war with people. You got what's going on in what they call the Middle East, which is a big lie. And no such thing as a Middle East. It's nothing but North Africa. And basically, what it was, all up and down the Mediterranean, was up that northern part of the Mediterranean, going on up to Turkey, still in ancient days was a part of ancient Africa, ancient Kemet. And most people don't even have not an inkling of idea about that because wherever you go, the more you dig, the deeper you dig, the blacker the history gets.
We said it before because the people who are writing the world history are the latest in the world history. That is why they are whitewashing history. Because truth don't need no defense. If you are spending a lot of money painting it, it means something is wrong. For example, the idea that Jesus should be a white man is fabrication because it should look like somebody coming from Morocco, coming from Iran, or from Saudi Arabia, from Egypt, from Ethiopia. Actually, if we were to take it further to where actually the story is coming from. But we see Europeans now fabricating things because they are used to fabricating things because they want to. One day I interviewed a professor here talking about the burden of supremacy. Because many people that are not really supremacists, they don't understand that it's a burden. It's a big burden. Because you feel you are defending something that is not natural. So you need to labor so much. Maybe that is why there is a lot of people that are committing suicide here because sometimes they cannot continue to defend their falsehood. If it is natural, you just need to just leave it there to explain itself. You don't need truth. Need no defense.
It's my father used to call it the naked truth. Okay, the naked truth stands on its own. It It needs no support because truth is truth.
Yeah.
Truth is facts. And for us to even think about this Eurocentric mindset and a Eurocentric Jesus, we have to question even if there was such thing as Jesus. Okay. I remember reading a book by Percy Graves entitled "The 16 Crucified Saviors."
I've heard of that. I've heard of that.
Okay, and it's a good book, and it shows that there were 16 different periods in time from the ancient days to the time of Jesus, that there was the quote unquote Jesus, that there were 16 crucified saviors. All of them was born on December 25th. All of them had 12 disciples. All of them died and rose from the dead. Okay, and Percy Graves used that information to show. Also, is another book by Sir Godfrey Higgins entitled Anacalyptus. It's speaking about the Saitic Isis. It's a 2-volume book. I think it's about 17 to 1800 pages total. And it's about the origin of languages, religions, and cultures around the planet. And they stated basically that the oldest religion that ever was recorded comes out of the continent of Africa, where mankind originated. When man was pastoral, when man was at ease with himself and had animals, domesticated animals, had domesticated plants for food, man had luxury, and man had the time to just relax and look up at the stars and wonder about the creation. And mankind created the concept of God. That's what it is. And then our history, the first immaculate conception story happened in ancient Kemet between Isis and Osiris, and creating the holy child Horus or Haru, and everybody just millenniums or centuries later copied another story and made some distortions to the story about to fit their particular area and time. So we're sitting up here regurgitating garbage that's been given to us. I have gentlemen. See, I'm ordained in the Baptist church as a minister. I'm ordained in the Church of God in Christ, another Pentecostal church, as a pastor. I pastored churches. And for the longest, I sat there and I regurgitated that mess up, telling people about this story and that story. But what I did, when I did look at it, I did a twist to it, because I always taught my congregationalists, the congregation, that all this stuff that we were reading in this Bible in the Old and New Testament was about African people, because of the region of the world that it was in, because of the time that it was. The people looked exactly like us. It looked like you and me. That whole region of the world was. So for us to sit up here and take on the mindset of a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white boy named Jesus, who's supposed to come back and save black folk, when the hell is he coming back? We've been waiting for 2,000 years. Where is he?
He's not coming. Bad news. Bad news. He's not coming. If you want to save yourself, rise up and save yourself, or you will wait for eternity.
Yeah. And all we do is regurgitate that information that was passed down to us.
It's stupidity.
Yeah.
It's pure stupidity. Yesterday, I sent you an article. That article talked about It's I think I should have sent it maybe 2 or so. Okay, no, not you, to another person. I was talking to another professor yesterday, a friend of mine, who will usually do a long conversation. So I sent him an article that I have to talk about Eastern spirituality. Now, in Eastern spirituality, we don't believe in Judgment Day. Judgment Day does not exist in our spirituality. Instead, life in this article I wrote is 5,000 words, because it's not a simple thing to just put out there. The context needs to be explained. The meaning of life, therefore, is a perpetual journey of becoming a better version of yourself, because you are God. That is how we see life. That is why, for example, when you die, if you live a good life, people can pray through you to reach the divine. You become an ancestor.
Yeah.
So you are God. You therefore become a higher level. So the idea that when you die, God is going to condemn you and put you in hellfire, for us, it doesn't exist, at least from our point of view, from our Eastern spirituality.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I've talked to Black Christians here in the U.S., and their greatest fear is death.
That is the least thing you should be afraid of, in fact.
Yeah, that should be the last thing that you should be afraid of.
You know, at least from my spirituality, from Eastern spirituality, that death is actually, it means nothing more than a transition. You are going to make the ancestor. That is, in fact, in my place, they say it have gone to the world beyond. That is how it is described. Not that you have terminated. You don't terminate. That is why death, people that died in my place, in my culture, are buried in the house. You live with them. You are part of the living and the dead. You are part of the before, the now, and the after. So you are never terminated. You should not be afraid of dying. That is why you should live good life, so that you should be in the good memory.
You want me to? I'm gonna show you something to just let you know how close the Africans in America are to their ancestors on the continent of Africa, to our connection to the continent of Africa. Because when I was a boy, I remember when an old individual died in our community, and then you would hear a baby was born, and you know what the old folks used to say? They said, "Who that? Who that? Who that?" They're saying, like, "Who is that? Is that one of somebody who came back?"
I love that. I love that. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, that's what they always used to say. And then I look at these little children. I got a grandbaby here. He's 21 months. He stays here at the house with me and my wife and our daughter.
Congratulations.
And yeah, and his mother's African who was born in America, but his father is from Liberia. Okay, and the little boy, he's just so smart. He's so intelligent. He looks at everything that everyone does, and he's so observant. It makes it seem like this child was here before. That's it. That's it. Because in traditional African belief systems, I noticed a lot of people the reincarnation. The same way over in the people in India, amongst the Hindus, they believe in reincarnation because this energy. We are energy. We are the spirit is energy.
Yeah.
And you can't destroy that energy.
Did science not prove that? Science proved that.
Yes. you know what? My uncle, my father's youngest brother, he wrote a book about 3 years ago entitled The Universe is in Us. Dr. Alan R. Rudison, PhD. He was a toxicologist, clinical pathologist, and also astrogeneticist.
We need to talk to that individual in this podcast.
Yeah, well, I can call him my uncle. He's in his late 70s, early 80s. My dad's youngest brother. and he wrote NASA had him to write this book.
Yeah.
And Neil deGrasse Tyson, who was one of the top astrophysicists on the planet, did the preface of the book for him, because in essence he said that all of us here on this planet, we're nothing but stardust. and that basically we as human beings on this planet are laptops connected to the universe, which is the mainframe.
I love that. I
Okay.
love that.
Okay. Yeah. And the killing thing about it, inside of the textbook, there's a picture from the Hubble telescope of the universe, stars bursting in the universe. Then they did a MRI, microscopic uh, a photo of the brain, and they took the two pictures and put them together, and they look like the same daggone picture.
That is knowledge.
Okay. Every mineral that's on this planet is in us. We have gold and cobalt and diamonds,
What of electricity?
iron ore, bauxite. All of that's in us.
What of vitamin?
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. We need to continue to talk about this. It's not just now, the internet is full of women going naked all the time, and the algorithm is promoting that. That is not what we want. We need knowledge. We need knowledge to help us discern stupidity from real thing.
Yeah. They show women naked and women with big behinds shaking in your face, and they want you to get caught up into your lower self, trying to go back into your lower self in your groin area, okay, where you don't think well. You don't think well when that thing gets to moving around and you want to do something with it. We got our mind twisted by this distorted story that these Europeans have given us, because they wouldn't give you any, like the late author Dick Gregory, the comedian Dick Gregory, a prominent black comedian back in the 60s here and 70s in the United States. He made this statement. He said, white folks didn't give you good housing, they didn't give you good clothing, they didn't give you good food, they didn't give you good health service, they didn't give you good education. He said, what makes you think they're going to give you good religion?
Just think. Just think.
Good religion? I'm going to take a religion from my oppressor. So then how am I going to pray? I was telling some brothers, I would be on a Bible study with some guys, and I told them the other day, I said, I don't play the same God that the white people pray to. Because if I'm praying to that God, I'm never going to get no help.
Just thinking. Maybe somebody's listening.
Huh? Yeah, I hope they are.
I hope.
One of these days we wake up, because I was in an interview a couple months ago with some brother from Nigeria, and he was so staunch in believing that the Bible was the infallible word of God. I said, man, you out your mind. How are you going to sit up and say something like that?
Welcome to Nigeria.
Yeah, and he was from, he was from a BBO people.
EBBO.
The BBO. Yeah, and Christianity was forced on them
all across
the continent. But they, and he was talking, oh no, brother, you can't say that, because I said, can you make one quote without using the Bible?
Let me share something with you. The other day, I did an interview with a guy. I said, let's talk about your faith. Fine. He come here, quoting. I said, come, can you use your mind to think? He said, no, he cannot use his mind to think. If you cannot use your mind to think, why are we talking? I want people to share what you have learned, not read for me from a book. I'm not interested. I can read myself.
I can read it myself.
Is it credible? Is it credible?
Yeah, it is.
That is
It
another
is, and
evidence
it
of the
shows you how
miseducation.
that's that's it. That's it right here. Are you? Have you ever looked at a movie by Haile Garima? It was a book called. It was a movie called Sankofa. Sankofa. It was made in 1980, and there's Haile Garima, who was he was a student at Howard University. He's from Ethiopia, and he did that movie on Sankofa, and it showed really how Africans who were brought here to the Western Hemisphere was forced into becoming Christians. You were beaten if you couldn't memorize a scripture. You were whipped if you didn't accept Jesus as your personal savior. And you had that. And as a child, I remember growing up as a kid, most of the time we went into different people's homes back in the 60s. The first picture you would see in someone's living room was a picture of a white Jesus, Abraham Lincoln, and John F. Kennedy. Three white men that were supposed to come save black people. They ain't saved us yet.
After all they have done. It's incredible. That is the miseducation we are talking about. That is the miseducation we are talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. We are, people are they're tuned to know. Only thing that they know, I know one man right now, he's a minister in the church. He's 81, 82 years old. And I just talked to him about the Bible, and he wanted to tell me, the Bible said this, and the Bible. I said, hey man, what do you say?
Yeah,
I know what the Bible
I
says.
can read myself too.
Yeah, I can read it myself. I know it better than you do. Because when he starts to preach, he calls me up and asks me for direction or interpretation. And I'm saying, like, man, come on. You better wake up and smell the coffee, bro. It's late in the game. You're 81 years old. You're closer to the end than I am. But you're afraid to open your mind and get an understanding that they are. One thing is when you tell somebody that the only way you can get through God is through Christianity and no other way.
Those are hypocrites.
Yes.
They are hypocrites.
Yes. You're damned and doomed and gonna go to hell if you don't believe in Jesus.
Yeah, hypocrites. It's unfortunate that sometimes, because of how the economy is configured, how the politics is configured, those are the people that usually have the chance because they give them the resources to be able to do that because they are part of the system. It's good. It's good for the system, no?
Yeah.
Anyway, brother.
You see Donald Trump standing in front of a church several years ago, and he got the Bible in his hand, talking about, I am a Bible. You don't even read the damn thing. You don't know what is even in it.
We're going to be careful with those kind of people because they are deceiver.
It was Leopold of Belgium. and he wrote a letter to the missionaries so that they would first thing he told them, he said, once you get to the Congo, he said, don't try to teach the Congolese anything about who God is because they already know who God is. He said, the main thing I want you to remember is to stay focused on the benefits, use the scripture to benefit the Belgian people so that they can maintain their authority. That's what it's all about. That they can maintain their control, take the minds of the people, tell them everything that their ancestors done, or their religious, their ways was evil. You don't go to the medicine man because the medicine man is demonic. You don't go to the spiritual man or woman because she's demonic. Everything that's not white is demonic.
All right, I'm on our website. I'm going to search for that article because we wrote an article about it recently. And we actually also did a podcast on it recently from a guy from Congo because that is an important Leopold. Let me see. We can find it. Okay, yeah, this is the article. That is the particular letter you are referring to.
Yes. I have the manuscript, the letter that he wrote to the missionaries in Congo.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That is good information. Okay, that video is not yet out because I interviewed the guy to talk about what is his take on this letter that Leopoldo wrote to the missionaries in Congo because it was quite disturbing. And of course, there is a part of it that we could see from a good light in that at least they know that the Africa already know God. They are not telling us about God for the first time. We know already, which is already a good thing.
Yeah. How you gonna tell me about something I already know?
Yeah. All right. Now, the last question here. What is the solution? How do we overcome miseducation within the African diaspora, or if we want to say also among Africans? Because we need this to be able to stand on our feet, because there is danger, like you said, if we are miseducated. But how do we overcome it now?
Ooh, if I had all the answers. My God. One thing that I would say is first is a self-evaluation. A psychological cleansing of the mind is basically what's needed. Is really what's needed. Is because the mind has been filled with a bunch of information that is not valid. So the thing is, there's a need for brainwashing to wash the brain and get all of this negative stuff from our minds, and then find out more information about things that are factual. When we find out the facts, which is facts and truth, are twin brothers, and when you find out the facts, dig and look for the facts and obtain the facts. That's why I was on a LinkedIn meeting the other day, and it was a bunch of people from West Africa on there, and there were several people who were ministers, and I talked to them. They were talking about mental health. I said there would be mental health is a very important issue because the African mind, the African psychic has been retarded. It's been distorted. It's been manipulated with a lie that came from Europe. So first and foremost, we got to get rid of the lie and shun and turn away from the lie and seek the truth. When we find the truth about our ancestors, about our traditional way of living, our traditional things, I'm talking about the good and the bad. Okay, I'm just not here talking about everything is good. I know there's some things that are bad, but there's a need for us to know the truth, and that's even that. And that I hate to use that Bible, but they had to make this statement: "Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." If you want to be free, look for the truth. Seek the truth. And the truth is not in the King James Version of the Bible. The whole truth is not in the Quran. It's not in the Talmud or the Torah. Before they even wrote those books, our people already had their own systems. Some of our ancestors wrote them in stone on walls, in monuments. You know, they didn't use paper. They used stone that it would stay around for generations after generation after generation, so their children can know, their children's children should know. I was talking to a brother from Nigeria the other day, a PhD, and he was saying was born in Nigeria, but he went to middle school and high school in the U.S. and he stayed here. But in the U.S., his mother brought him here, and he ended up getting his PhD. But he said he kind of became westernized and forgot some of their history. And I asked him what tribe was he from, and he said Yoruba. I said, well, you know, you Yoruba, you know, you familiar with King Adudawa? He was like, what?
Who's a
He
dude?
had to go back and he forgot. He forgot that, but he said, "Oh man, you made me have to go back and think and look back. I did know about Duduwa because he was the first. He was the first Oba, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so he's the first Oba, and they said he came from the north. So in other words, the attire and even his headdress looked like the same thing that you saw in the pyramids in Kemet. So Adudawa was was African in the first place, and he just migrated to the west coast in Nigeria thousands of years
You know,
ago.
the thing is very interesting. It's very, very interesting in the sense that again, we're first of all going to take away European from the narrative because they came late. So we cannot they are not
Yeah,
qualified to tell African history. In this sense, when we talk about African history, we're going to understand that for thousands of years, Africa have been moving from north to south, east to west. That was the only place that we stay. So that we have missed up a number of occasions. Whether you talk of the Yoruba, the Igbo, the Hausa, there is a very close connection in our linguistic, which is our language group is called the Niger Congo language,
yeah.
which is what we are speaking. Our culture is also tied up like that. So, which means now that for several thousands of years, we are the same people that have been moving around.
It's the birthplace of mankind. So why wouldn't everything be there? I remember Neil deGrasse Tyson making the comment. He said, If you want to find the smartest people in the world, go to Africa.
Yeah.
If you want to find the dumbest people in the world, go to Africa. If you want to find the tallest people in the world, go to Africa. If you want to find the shortest people in the world, they're in Africa. The fastest people in the world is in Africa. The slowest people in the world is in Africa. You know, the smartest people in the world is Africa. Come on.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your contribution here, brother. Now, what would be your final take to conclude this conversation today? It really has been eye-opener. This is a full lecture, full of value and really rich. How do you conclude it?
If you want to have a liberated mind, if you want to live a life to your fullest, I'm inclined to believe that it's a need for you to search yourselves, look at your culture, see the culture that you have obtained is the culture here in this country, if you or whatever country that you're in. But look at and go back and look at the origin of where your ancestors come from, and look at the civilizations that they created, the technology that they created, science, the math, and all of these things that were created, and we see it comes right back to the place that we call Mama Africa or Kibble. That is that is the root of education. The root of education started right there on the continent of Africa. So if you want to become connected to your African psyche, that's what I'm hurt right now because I'm speaking to you in English and you're speaking to me in English. Okay, I was saddened that I can't speak Isum. Uh, is that the correct name pronunciation?
Esan. Yeah.
Esan. Esan. I said Esun. Esan. Or I couldn't speak in Yoruba or Igbo, where I could speak in the language and understand exactly the culture. because I can practice traditional belief, but I'm inclined to believe that language is very important. It's instrumental, and I'm working right now with individual to learn Igbo as we speak. Uh, and I met the young man just a couple of weeks ago when I did. I was a keynote speaker for the Iowa Nigerian Association 64th Independence Day celebration here in Des Moines, and I was a keynote speaker, and it was a great event. The people enjoyed it. We had close to about 200 people there. Food, everybody was dressed in African attire, and I'm sitting in the room, and I'm uh, the only person with one exception of one European that was in the room. Was the only person that was not an indigenous African, and I was saddened because wish I could had communicated in one of the indigenous languages. So it would make me feel closer, even though I am close because you are my brother. Uh, you know, I'm older than you. I might be your uncle,
Yeah.
more like it.
Big
Okay,
brother.
yeah, big brother, old big brother. Okay, so, but still, I'm I thank the Creator, and I thank my parents for influencing and making me aware of my of our original state and how we were, because a lot of people in this portion of the world who look like me, the first thing that they want to say when it comes to Africa is that slavery, and most of them don't understand slavery was an interruption of African history. That's all it was.
Absolutely.
It was an interruption, but our history is deep and extremely old. We have to educate our own, and we need, even on the continent of Africa, just like here and anywhere else in the African diaspora, we need schools that teach the Afrocentric perspective. Africology is what it is.
Yeah. I've interviewed a professor that taught me about that, and I said, this is beautiful. This is beautiful. I think we need to use the internet of the time, the technology of the time, to be able to fast forward some of the work that was supposed to be done yesterday. But this work is our that will do it. We are going to be the one to do it. And of course, that is part of why we are here, to bring in different voices to sort of animate the conversation, because we need it. And it's going to be done with the help of our ancestors, and with our continuous contribution, the work will be done. Because at least we know that the solution is not going to come from any other place. It's going to come from us. So we are accepting the challenge and we are doing it. And of course, we're also asking the audience, those that are listening to us, if you get any value from this video, let us know. Dr. Negus spend the time giving you good information. If you value it, at least leave your comment in the comment section. Let us know that you find something here. I'm sure that there is something new that came to your mind today. Don't let it die there. Pass it on to other people. That is what it's all about. Let's share. Let's enlighten other people too, so that they can also pass the message on. Is no one, teach one, and we'll be able to get to the end of it. So thank you so much, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you.